we are going to bring up probably two of the least favorite, would you call them personalities?
Yes, I would.
Amongst the people that consume this content, mainly focusing on one of these two gentlemen, and that is Bill Nye, the science guy, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Really, this video is going to be about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Specifically, he was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah. And I'd like to talk a little bit, too, also about Joe Rogan.
You've been chomping at the bit about this.
Yeah. Joe Rogan is also another one that the flat earth community, I would say, considers him, bad guys, right?
So let's call it two people we're going to talk about, Joe Rogan and Neil deGrasse Tyson. And
Yeah.
Bill Nye, let's get it out. Bill Nye is not even a science guy.
He's not even a science guy. He's an actor playing one.
That's been pretty much exposed in mainstream media, but glossed over. So
and why he's the go-to guy for all of the mainstream news when there's a science issue, I have no idea. They could have gotten a real scientist with a freaking bow tie, but
he has a lab coat.
Oh, yeah. Lab coat and a tie. So
I
anyway.
don't even know what the fuck Neil deGrasse Tyson's wearing in his interviews.
I know.
So you can curse now like he did before we started recording.
Yeah, right. We might drop in a couple of foul words here, so not suitable for work.
Be demonetized.
Right. Okay. Anyhow, Joe Rogan is in particular someone that I've got mixed feelings about. So when I heard him reverse his opinion on the moon landing,
hard.
Yeah, that is the definition of an about face 180, right? In the past, he was one of the most vocal, well-read, educated, vehement deniers of the moon landing that I've ever heard. It was incredible.
And he was considered to have a conspiracy podcast. If you think about it, a lot of people, he covered a lot of that stuff all the time. That was like the number one conspiracy podcast out there.
Right. And he's the guy who actually got on network or cable television with the Joe Rogan show with the Bigfoot, and finding out if Bigfoot's real and all that stuff. So this guy, to me has always been a truth seeker. And he's good friends with Alex Jones, etc. But the moon landing, he was so against it. And then all of a sudden in the last year or so, he just went the other way and said, "Oh, who am I to question a moon landing? Of course we went. Yeah, we went to the moon." And even his friends, Eddie Bravo and those guys on the podcast are like, "Joe, why? Why did you change?" And he has no answer, no specific answer. I would understand if he said, what convinced me was when NASA provided such and such and such and such, boom, there you go. That was the proof. But he never did. He never gave a reason. So let's talk about that for a second. What would you think? The Flat Earth community calls him a sellout. So, why would Joe turn?
My number one thing, when it was literally, I think, from one episode to the next where it was that about face, it was pretty sudden. It wasn't starting to doubt and starting to come around.
It wasn't a gradual shift.
No, not at all. I had thought, just with the way my mind works, was he could have got paid off. He could have got intimidated. He could have been this shill all along, and he just kind of, a lot like wrestling, he just changed gimmicks or changed sides. All of a sudden he turned.
Right.
And I don't know now, because we had a discussion off camera before this, and he could be a lot smarter than we even realized. Your theory, I would say, as a spoiler, the more you presented that theory, I believed it, but present it to everybody out there.
Okay, so before I say that theory, let me go over the first two that automatically come to people's minds when they think conspiracies, Joe sold out. A lot of people will say, like to think, well, maybe someone showed up in a suit with a big briefcase of money. Here, take the money, Joe, and turn, whatever. And then other people say maybe he was threatened, right? Reasonable.
No, number two seems to happen a lot more than the first one. The big pile of money.
Yeah, I don't really necessarily think it was either of those. I personally think if that was the way he went, if he sold out, I personally think it was more of a, hey, contract renewal time. We're going to give you a big contract. Here you go. Big contract. But look, we've got a lot of people and sponsors and that sort of thing. No more moon stuff. No more moon stuff.
Which happens all the time with podcasts, radio shows, TV.
Content, right?
Change your content. Yeah.
Exactly. The bigger you are, the more feathers you're ruffling, okay? And we can't handle that as a company, as the parent company. So, look, here's your big deal. Take it or leave it, but no more moon stuff. No more this. No more beating up NASA. So he takes it. He's got a family, right? Mm-hmm. He takes it. If he were to ever go into it, he would lose that deal. He could lose that deal. It'd be breach of contract.
With the approach he used to go into it with.
Right. With the whole, moon landing is a hoax. So if that's the way it went down, I think that's more the realistic way it would have happened. Now, having said that, if you pay attention to his comments when he talks about flat Earth, I've heard him say F flat Earth, like straight up. Oh, fuck flat Earth, blah, 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 blah. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. But yet he has Eddie Bravo on there constantly giving the pro flat Earth sides of the argument. And even in his own comments, he actually calls them stupid, but puts forward some of flat Earth's best arguments. Like, oh yeah, right. Like they like to say water can't curve around a ball. He brings up, they like to say something about the horizon rising up to your eye level. Like some of flat Earth's main points, he's the one that actually puts them out there. But then he does so tongue in cheek. So he's not ruffling the feathers. He can say he's against it. I don't think if he was truly against it, I don't think he would continue to have Eddie Bravo on. And I don't think he would continue to keep dropping some of Flat Earth's main points. I think secretly, Joe Rogan is a closet flat earther.
Now let's ask about your opinion with this, because you're still kind of on that journey. We both are, where we're asking questions, trying to figure it out. What have you been any further along or leaning towards flat Earth more so than you did before?
Yeah, I'm kind of 80% sure it's relatively flat.
What's the 20% that's making you not think it is?
There's only one factor that I think is yet to be fully explained. I know I've seen a lot of videos that try to explain this, and that's that when you're in the southern hemisphere, the stars rotate a different direction, and that leans more to the globe. Every single bit of evidence otherwise points to a flat Earth.
You can just take one of those direct flights from New Zealand to like Brazil, right?
Yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say.
You can do that.
Right.
So you can find out for yourself.
I'd like to. I really would. But
it'll cost you $11,000 and be canceled.
Yeah, right. And be delayed. Yeah. But I am 150% sure that the heliocentric model of our Earth, Sun, Moon, stars is wrong. So I am completely. There's just too many holes. There's too much against it. It has too much going against it for me to ever believe in it again. And I personally, people may think I'm crazy, but I think that Joe Rogan is more of a flat Earth guy than people.
No, it's very.
His words.
It's really interesting. It's interesting. It's a different take, and he would, have to. It's very clever. The Eddie Bravo factor is very unique because he wouldn't have that content on his show at all, or they tell Eddie Bravo, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Too. But the Neil deGrasse Tyson interview that we were just watching before we started recording. Yeah, that's really interesting too, because man, you talk about just a talking head.
Yeah.
A shill.
Neil deGrasse. Cool.
Oh my God. Shill gets thrown around. I'm sure we've been called shills. People who we subscribe to and always plug, like Russian Vids and other people. Shill. Neil deGrasse Tyson, man, in this interview that we were watching, and we were going to try to play some clips and see if we can. If not, we'll just take it.
Yeah, we'll just talk about it.
Blow by blow, where he's just not, is he even listening to what Joe Rogan is proposing? Like you said, throwing out the flat Earth argument, and Neil deGrasse Tyson is basically, that's right.
Yep. Yeah, and then goes into his way of thinking, and well, when I debate with people, and I don't debate because if it goes
the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, if it goes past 5 minutes, like, come on, man. And Joe Rogan did, to his credit, put him in his place on that suggestion. Play the clip.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that caught my eye in this interview, like you suggested, was him putting forth these arguments that are actually straw man arguments. Like, two of the things he suggested was, we've got satellite pictures of the full Earth, right? We've got tons of those. It's almost as if he's setting up with that is a false statement. Because we don't have very many pictures of the full Earth. But he's throwing it out there as, oh yeah, it's true, waiting for Neil deGrasse to bite and not deny it.
Which is exactly what happened.
And then he does it a few minutes later with the Coriolis effect and the sniper shooting, which is...
Well, I want to go in between those two statements.
Sure.
He was trying to, it was like that moment for me was like, if you've gotten in this argument so many times and you're this incredible scientist and you've been pretty much submerged into this debate for so long, he was literally like looking up, rolling his eyes in the back of his head going, I got to calculate how much does the earth curve in a mile?
Yeah. Oh, and and then there's the drop of gravity. And you're right. He couldn't even say what the formula is that he's supposedly arguing with B.O.B. and everyone else.
Yeah, every flat earther can recite it. The Eric Dubés and the, who else is it? Allegedly Dave. They know exactly.
And look, the worst part about that entire bit was when Neil deGrasse Tyson goes into detail about his feud with B.O.B. He did something so sleight of hand, and he did it back then, and he's still doing it now. B.O.B.'s statement on Twitter was he was standing up on Bear Mountain. In back of him is the skyline. He said there should be a certain amount of curve between these two cities. Not where he was standing and Manhattan. He's talking about like a triangle effect. He's standing back and looking at a wide view of two cities 20 miles apart.
That's that one I sent you from that house show that they could see Manhattan, and it was straight across, and it wasn't the distance from the island to the buildings. It was from the building to the left, right, as you're looking at the horizon.
So that was what B.O.B. stated was, look, you see those two buildings, those two cities? That's a city on the left and a city on the right behind me. We should see a curve there, but we don't. That was his point. But Neil deGrasse twisted it to say, well, B.O.B. is saying that we shouldn't see Manhattan from here. You with me?
I'm with
you.
He
never said that. He twisted the argument because it was easily defeatable and has ran with it every chance he's gotten. That is really, that just stinks of corruption and bad debating right there.
That's true. And talk about the sniper bullet.
And the sniper bullet,
anybody who's listening to that, this is going to blow people's minds too with the casual answer that he gave, which is completely ignorant.
Yes. One of the when I started researching Flat Earth, one of the things that jumped out at my attention was when someone approached the theory of, well, don't snipers have to account for the curve of the Earth and the spin of the Earth? And I was like, yeah, which is it? The spin? They do. I know they do. I've seen that. And then I thought, where did I hear that from? I heard it from a movie. A movie, not even I wasn't in the military. I don't know. And then you've got all these guys coming forward on videos from the military saying, no, they say that there's this, that, the other, but what you're really adjusting for is the density in the air and the winds, right? But no, there is none. It's a myth.
That's like your dad, who's a civil engineer. You asked him, did you ever account for the curvature when you were building a long bridge?
Yeah, or pipelines. He put these pipelines that went literally across the country of Saudi Arabia and never once had to learn the curvature formula. Apparently, neither did Neil deGrasse Tyson as well. But yeah, it's not there. Neither do these the military soldiers who are snipering, if that's a word. They don't have to factor in that formula, the curve of the Earth. But it's a myth that has grown into our heads.
What would Neil deGrasse Tyson say to a sniper then? He said, I don't have to. Is he going to say, yes, you do? I've killed 100 people.
I have no idea.
How are you telling me? Hey, I don't think he'll ever put himself in that situation with a civil engineer.
No.
With a sniper or with anybody else that has any kind of experience where they say, I never had to learn that.
No. One thing I've noticed about Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, these scientists, when they're talking about topics like this, they pick their spots. They don't get into it in an open discussion where the other party has a chance to respond back and forth. You won't see that. They go on shows to comment, to refute someone else's comments.
And
marginalize them. Correct. And then call them dangerous for suggesting these dangerous thoughts to other people. It's okay if you have those thoughts to yourself, but when you spread it to others, that's dangerous. They really are careful about how they do it, and they're good at it. If I can give him any credit, it's that he's awfully clever and he's fast talking. But if you listen, there's no substance. It's like the curvature stuff. He talked about it, but never could even cite the curvature formula.
No, he came off pretty goofy in that in an interview. Joe Rogan seemed more like a physicist than him.
I know, right? But isn't it interesting that the two points, just, looking at it on the surface here, and there might be more, but 2 points he brings up about flat Earth are, we've got tons of photos of the full Earth from satellites, right? And, we have to account because the snipers have to shoot, right? But Joe Rogan is so smarter than that, and he's got Eddie Bravo on every other day with him, who's actually been countering all those arguments for him. So even if he wasn't researching it himself, he knows the argument. Joe Rogan was smarter than that, and I really think that whole thing was to trap Neil deGrasse Tyson.